Today is July 24th, 2018. Today I'm going to talk to you about the language of violence, the language that these killers use. The language of violence. There are many degrees of violence. There are many acts of violence. Even our judicial system, when we punish people, we punish them for the degree of the crime and the degree of the violence that they use in the commission of that crime. There are the levels 1 through 7. Level 7 crime, the unbelievable kidnapping, child murder, aggravated sodomy, aggravated child molestation, aggravated kidnapping, just things that where violence, extreme violence is used in these acts and these commissions of these crimes. So when these killers kill, when a killer comes on scene who's been a mild-mannered Clark Kent, docile, quiet as a lamb, no real signs going up of any pre-existing violence or any degrees of violence. He was subjected to violence his entire upbringing, or never subjected to violence. We're getting such a different. Every time a killer comes on scene, he's a different snowflake. So many similarities about the mechanics and how they succeeded and how they were able to do what they did because they followed the mechanics of the previous killer, and they were able to just emulate his every move from the time he drove up, the timing, the time of the encounter, where he went in, how he entered the school, how he walked, how he was loaded, how he reloaded, how he killed, how he finished, how he killed himself, or he got captured. Same mechanics, same mechanics, same mechanics, like a fingerprint. It's the same mechanics. And we're finding out that these kids weren't as screwed up as we thought they were. They've all had, and I say this with humility, everybody's had a little bit of ass whooping in America growing up. Everybody. That's why we're such tough kids. That's why we had to fight for ourselves when we were little. So growing up, we were all exposed to a degree of violence, and the loudness of that violence for a lot of people was extreme. So when these kids kill, how do they come with such an extremity of absolute utter apocalyptic violence that we haven't seen in this nation, violence that we have not been prepared for as a nation to see. Now this takes place in other nations. The Tutus hacking off babies' arms and hacking people to death in villages in Africa, and the beheadings that take place in the Middle East, the drownings that take place, the suicide forest in Japan. These are things that each nation has to deal with. But we as a nation here in America, when our kids come on scene and do this stuff, and they do this stuff with such brutality, and we wonder and we sit back, where in the world are they getting this from? Let me explain to you about the language of violence. There's nothing more atrocious or nothing more horrific as a human being than when one human being takes the life of another human being. The original sin and all that. One human being takes the life, snuffs the life out, smothers the life, takes the life of another individual human being. How that life is taken is how we measure a lot of things in our lives sometimes. We measure the degree of the insult. We measure the degree of the assault by how much violence was actually involved. It's one thing to punch somebody in the nose, but then it's another thing to punch him in the nose, knock him down, and try to beat him to death or beat him to death. That violence escalates. It's gone from just a punch in the nose to a minor degree of violence to extreme act of violence. You're trying to take the person's life or you've taken his life. And so when these kids come on scene and they're emulating the killer before them, and the killer before them had such incredible results, 12 killed, 15 wounded, shot up the school, shot up this, just had the whole town just on edge. Now everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows where he is. Everybody knows what he's done. But nobody knows why he did it. So here's a lesson about the language of violence. There is nothing more inhumane or inhuman on this planet in our lives than to take the life of another human being. Remove that quality of life, kill him, take his life, stop his life from existing by your deliberate act of violence or murder. You take his life. You think that's the worst there is, but there is a degree, there's a language of violence. There's something louder than that. When you take that person's life, now you can kill somebody by accident. That's not too bad, but that's forgivable. But when you kill that person, that's when it opens up so many different doors of review for understanding. And then if you take that person's life in a a degree of violence, and that person is innocent, then that has escalated. That is a louder. That is a louder act. That has a louder performance of violence. Violence is speaking a little bit louder now. And then when you take that person's life, who is totally innocent, doesn't deserve what you've done, doesn't deserve what you are inflicting on them. That innocent person you just killed. Now take that to the next level. What if that innocent person is a child? And then to the next level. What if that innocent person is a child and it's a small child? When Lance went in there and blasted up Sandy Hook and killed 6 and 7-year-olds, I believe it was Lanza. I get you. It all, when you get old, it all starts running together. I believe it was Lanza. I study these guys so much. Their names all just, I dream about them. But anyway, forgive me if it's not Lanza. I think it was Lanza. 22 years old, walked into Sandy Hook, killed 12 kids. Or was it 20? I don't, forgive me. I do have my facts right. I'm just so immersed in this stuff right now that it's just all starting to run together. But nevertheless, he committed this atrocity. I believe it was 20. He killed 20 children and wounded 6 adults. I think that's the right numbers. Forgive me if they're not, but I believe that's it. I believe it was Lanza. I believe he's 22 years old. I believe he killed 20 children and he wounded 6 adults. Or it might have been 6 adults were killed also as well. Nevertheless, when Lanza committed this brutality, 6 and 7-year-olds, the point I'm trying to stress here is 6 and 7-year-old children. How do you do that? And the answer is it's a language of violence. These guys are coming on all their lives. They've been called this, they've been called that. You're useless, you're worthless, you're no good, you're a piece of crap. You should have been dead, wish you weren't born, wish you weren't alive. You're nothing but a failure, a loser. Why can't you be like your brother? Why can't you be like your sister? Why can't you be like your father, your uncle? Why can't you be like him? Why can't you be like her? How come you can't do like they're doing? Just act normal. Well, he isn't acting normal. He's just a round peg in a square hole of life. He's trying to fit in, but he can't. So all through his life, he's been hearing this language of violence coming down, even if it's just in a small, candy-coated sort of way. But over a period of time, just like the sponge that he is, he's just a little sponge sitting on the counter. This is a sponge. It's supposed to be a sponge. It's a lousy-looking sponge. Just like a sponge. He's just a little sponge. He's sitting on a countertop and all this stuff. Everybody's opinion of him and everybody that has just been dumping this garbage and this trash. This is a language of violence. This is whispers of violence. They've been pouring into this sponge and he's just been filling up until now he's full. Now he's either pre-adolescent, 17, 19, 21 years old, or he's an adult. But nevertheless, he's an adult that's full of the language of violence already in him. He's been told his whole life what he is. And most of the times, none of it was true. It was just the assault of unlearned people, unscrupuled people, drunkards, drug addicts, mean people, mean. We're the meanest nation I've ever seen on my planet with the meanest people in it. Good people, but I'll tell you what, you be careful. There's some mean people in the United States. So his sponge is full. He's full. He's been hearing it his whole life. People have been telling him what he is his whole life. And so all of a sudden he tried to fit in. He couldn't fit in. Total misfit. Didn't know how to talk to people. Couldn't talk to anybody. Social misfit. No social skills. Went to school. Called stupid his whole life. So he didn't really even care from the beginning. And some of them are quite intelligent for being so stupid. They're very intelligent. They are able to stay off and hide off the radar that we have developed looking for them. We can't find them. We couldn't find them if they wrote on their forehead, killer in training, or killer to be, or killer in lair, waiting in his lair to spring. We wouldn't know it. We really wouldn't know it. I told you before, you could fall down a rabbit hole into a killer's lair and you would not know you were there. Because you don't know what you're looking for. What are you really looking for? Weirdness? Okay, that eliminates down to 80 million people in America, because everybody's weird to some degree. He looks like a killer. Everybody has a family that somebody in it looks like a killer. So when this killer in training, this killer that's begun his journey, and he's headed toward a point that will end an act of extreme violence where he has killed 20 kids that are 6 and 7 years old. How does he get to that point of committing to that type of loudness? And the thing is that with violence, he's going to speak into the void that has been his life, he's going to make a statement. He's going to come on scene, and all of this stuff that we've been telling him what he is, he's going to prove that he's not. He's going to come on scene. He's going to come on scene with an assault rifle. He's coming to that place with ill intention. That intention is to kill innocent children or kill innocent people. And he's using a brutal assault rifle with hundreds of rounds of ammunition. And he's speaking in a language that nobody really on this planet or in this nation really has a full grasp or understanding of. How can somebody just walk into a school and kill 26 and 7-year-olds? And it's the language of violence. It's not about his callousness. It's not about his understanding of things. It's not about his spirituality. He's moved past all that. He's all numb and void to all that. All that makes no sense in it. It never really has, but especially now. He's on a mission. He severed all ties of moral obligation and moral commitment. He's probably stopped going to church. He's probably never went to church. You never know, but the language of violence that he comes on scene and he speaks, he kills these children so that when it's all said and done and when it's all over with, the world will now be saying his name. He wants the world to know him. Since he hasn't been known his whole life, nobody knew anything about him until now. Now he steps on scene, and with his assault rifle, because how can he step on scene? He probably hasn't even fired that assault rifle. Probably 2 or 3 rounds or 2 or 3 clips from him. Probably 30, 60 shot practice is all he's really been able to do is that assault rifle. Just because he's tried to stay so low profile. So when he gets on scene and he's got all these kids in front of him, and he's able to just blast unmercilessly, doesn't even skip a beat, bam, from one target to the next. He's just shooting kids and people that are in his line of sight. He's not walking through doing selective murdering. You die. Now, if you study the tapes of Columbine, it looks like that's what they did, but it's not. And that just takes too much chalk to break down how they went through there and selectively killed the people that they did. But there was a whole lot more to that. There was a rhythm that they were moving in. There was a rhythm that they were feeding off of one another, each other. They were looking at each other. They were seeing this. They were sponsoring one another. They were encouraging one another. They were speaking the language of violence. But when you come through and you can just kill these innocent kids like that, you're speaking a language of violence that when it's all said and done, and all the talking heads start babbling, and everybody looks at it, just like they looked at the last killer, they're going to say, oh my God, now we know his name. Now we know his name. We can look back all the way to the crib in his life, but yet all we see is just question marks. We see where he lived, how he lived, and why he lived, but we never understand what brought him to this school to murder. And murder was such a loudness and such an extreme violence. It's compared to Hitler's days. Even worse, the days when Stalin murdered 43 million Russians, and Hitler butchered the Jews, and Hitler butchered everything that was non-German and German. There is a degree of darkness that these fellows enter into. And I have to do it in one of these lessons where I have to take you and show you what true motive is. The truest motive for this extreme loudness of violence that they move in and they operate in and they show up in, that it just takes our breath away. We cannot figure it out. Why? Because it is unlike anything we have ever seen. And even after 20 years of this brutality, we are still not able to adjust our normal, everyday, average Joe minds to it. But I want to say this, and I want to say this with all the love and all the concern and all the compassion I have in me. Get ready. Get ready. You think Paddock was just a Blythe that came along? Get ready. What do we do when millionaires with all the money and all the answers and no reasons to flip out? What do we do when they start flipping out because they're bored? How much more of a mystery could that man have been? He was gambling before he committed the final act, the final flip out. But he had a plan. They all get a plan. But the plan is that when it's all done and over with and everything is done and the body has been counted and he's been counted and he's been taken to prison, when it's all said and done, they're going to know his name. He's going to be entered into the journal of the history books with his body count, how he did it, where he did it, and it'll always be cemented in history forever. He'll be a somebody. Whereas all his life he's been a nobody. Nobody, you're no good for nothing. Yes, stupid idiot. You crazy little fool. Just nothing, no good like your father and his father. Alcoholic, drug addict, whore. I've never seen a nation that calls 11-year-old virgin daughters whores because they want to put makeup on, kick them out of churches, label them, stigmatize them, and then characterize them, and then bully them, and yell at them and tell them how useless they are, and how no good they are, and that they wish they were never born. You're a mistake. You should have never been born. And then they're beat and smacked. Not disciplined. There's a difference between discipline and beatings. And then we wonder why these kids take up arms and kill like they do. They've had enough. They've had enough. And they're not doing it because of a lot of, this is just some of the ingredients. The reason they're able to do this with such high body count is because these kids are emulating the ones before and the next one. The next one will emulate this one. You look back to Columbine. How could they not want to do what Klebold and Harris did? How could they not? They get an idea. They get a seed of violence. How could they not want to emulate these guys? These guys had movies made after them. They're millions of views on YouTube. They're just celebrities. And these are kids that have nothing. They're not going to college. They're not, or maybe one or two were in college. Joe was in college, I believe. But the interest is not college. The interest is if it's not retribution, the absolute personality behind all of this is so that the world will know who and what they really are and can be. And that's what they're saying through the language of violence. They are speaking. They are speaking as loud as they physically can. And the only reason they don't have more people killed when they do this stuff is because they flee. The first bullet always puts them to flight. Most people that are victimized and killed are shot in the back. It's a brutality. And I have to say this, you better get ready. If you can legally carry a firearm, and I'm not pro-gun, I'm not NRA, I'm not nothing. I'm pro-staying the hell alive. I'm pro-life. And I say it in a sense, I'm pro-staying alive. That's what I'm pro. And if you don't deal with the negative aspects of it, we're all just always going around positive, saying, oh, well, it's going to work out. This might have been the last one. This is not the last one. This is not the last one. It's July 24th, 2016. By August, 7 days. Something will pop up. I'm thinking in Arizona. Arizona's about due for one. New Mexico, that area right there. Southern California, always going to be a hotbed. Southern Florida. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know why something hasn't popped up in Hawaii. These guys are going to start pairing up, tripling up. They're going to start taking time to sit down and mastermind. Pull a paddock, but a paddock where they have an escape route, where they can get out. Like the DC snipers. The guy and the kid shooting out of the back of that car. They're going to make it where it's hard and near impossible to catch them. We got to start hardening these targets. These targets are too soft, way too vulnerable, way too open. It's too easy to just walk up on a school and walk in and start blasting away. Too easy. I'm not saying arm up every teacher. If the teacher don't want to carry arms, don't. But get one or two in the school that can return immediate fire just for now, while the kids march, while we pass new laws, while we write new legislation, while we corral the mentally ill, while we keep going after 300 million legal guns. While we're doing all this, can somebody at least babysit and watch the babies armed up? Because I've told you before, we had to return fire. That's the key to this thing. You don't even have, when I say return fire, I'm not saying every teacher in the school is going to be toting a sidearm or got one under the shoulder, ready to just blast away at some innocent kid who's hopping because he got accepted at college. That's not going to happen. There's going to be some bugs. There's going to be some mistakes. The two guys that killed that shooter in was it Arkansas or Oklahoma? Both of them shot him, boom, and then the police said, oh, well, it could be confusing. Shoot him. You know if a shooter pops up, be looking for him and blow his brains out. That's the solution. We'll work all the other details and bugs out. You know what those two did? Oh, we're not heroes. They are heroes. They kept the high body count from happening. And even if you're not a good shot and you can just get one round off, as he's moving toward, pow, 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 he's shooting, and you just, that ain't going to be his bullet he hears. That's going to be whiz by and hit the wall. And I'm telling you, he's not just going to keep coming in Rambo. He's not like that. These are non-confrontational individuals. They do not want to have confrontation. That's why they pick targets where there's no guns. That's why they pick targets that they can control, that there's not going to be anybody shooting back. That's why they come in blasting freely like this, because they know nobody's going to kill them. You let them come walking in freely blasting and take one through the shoulder. That party's over. That shooting spree's done. All you got to do is, you don't even have to run up and remove the guns from them. Just hold them or keep shooting at them over the wall. Keep them pinned until the SWAT team comes in. At least the kids are able now to run without being shot. It makes sense, and you know it does. In your heart of hearts, Grandpa, Grandma, if you can legally carry a firearm, put it on your hip, at least till this gets worked out. I'm telling you, this is coming from the mind of somebody that knows what he's talking about. I am not legally licensed to carry a gun. I'm not a cop. But when you get shot at and somebody's prowling and burglaring around your house and there's a stranger in your yard, what do? If you don't have a gun? You call the cops. Why? You want to bring Freddie Johnson over here you go to church with so he can just kind of, no, you're bringing a gun. You're calling a gun. And you're calling somebody that has the authority and the wisdom to use lethal force. And if it need be, and they get in a confrontation, he's going to kill that bad guy. You need to give the cops a break. They are overwhelmed with this protected America. And you, if you have kids in school, you better take up arms at that school yourself. Volunteer to just sit in the parking lot. Why? Because it's your responsibility. No, those teachers, they love your kids. Don't get me wrong. I know they do. There's some good teachers in this land. But they're not going to love your baby like you do. You might herd them into a classroom, but I don't think you're going to stand in the hallway unarmed and take a bullet for them. I might be wrong. I know there have been some that do it, and I applaud them, but it's about self-preservation. When it's time to run, it's time to run. The ones that go back and rescue are the ones that get killed. It sounds sad, I'm saying that. Take up arms. That's enough for now. We'll pick this up later.